Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the last Wednesdays with Witcher for Family History Month 2022. I'm Curt Witcher. It's a pleasure to have you joining us this afternoon. It's a pretty gloomy day here in Fort Wayne, but it's always a great day to be together during Family History Month talking about finding our stories, telling our stories, being better at being family historians that we are, right? So welcome. As with all of these Wednesdays with Witcher programs, there is no handout. It's just a listening session for us to muse about ways, again, that we can be the best we can be in finding, preserving, and presenting our family stories. That's what it's all about. We usually don't take questions because this is just a half-hour segment. Please feel free to use the chat to talk to one another, to exchange ideas. Maybe something I say over the next 28 to 30 minutes will pique or spark an idea in your mind and you want to share that. I think in sharing our experiences with telling our stories, we all can gain more. We can get new insights. We can have a few, at least mini aha moments. Aha, I never thought of doing it that way. I never thought of using that kind of a technique. This being the last Wednesday with Witcher session for the Family History Month 2022, I'll be recapping just a few things that we've covered the previous 3 Wednesdays, but I hope to motivate you, to encourage, entice you to think very seriously about telling the story. And when I talk about telling the story, which story is the story? Well, for those of you who know me, the answer is clearly yes. Every story, any story. Don't get so wrapped up in doing it totally correctly, totally perfect. A lot of my colleagues know among my many sayings is never let perfection get in the way of progress. We know perfection is kind of unattainable, so why let that get in the way of progress? So let me just take a quick look at chat before we get started and see where folks are joining us from. As usual, you lighten our hearts and bring a smile to our face from all the different places you're coming and joining us from. Michigan, California, a lot of Indiana friends, folks from all around the state of Indiana, from Texas, from Georgia, from Massachusetts. Really, really great to have all of you joining. Again, with Wednesdays with Witcher, we typically don't have a handout, and we don't today, and we typically don't take any questions. The session is being recorded, so it will eventually make it onto our YouTube page. And that website is simply Genealogy Center, all one word, .org, genealogycenter.org. And you can look down in our YouTube link and see nearly 200 various YouTubes, and these will also make it to that page eventually. And by eventually, I'm thinking before Thanksgiving, we will probably have these available to you. So thanks so much for your interest, and thank you so much for joining us today from literally all over the country. I hope it's been a good Family History Month for you. And my aspiration is rooted in, I hope you have done active things. You've not just mused about things, not just thought about things. Both those are wonderful, but that you've actually done something this month, done something in real life, in real time, to further finding, preserving, and presenting your family story. I'm going to go off camera for a little bit, likely the rest of the session. Again, welcome and thanks for joining us. No handout today, and likely no questions from the Q&A button, but feel free to use the chat to communicate amongst yourselves. I'm going to share my screen so we can get started here on why we're all here. I believe why we're all here, right? So let's begin to talk just a little bit about telling the stories. as I just mentioned, the stories. They're our stories, and they're all of them or all that we're comfortable with. So telling the stories, taking advantage of the boundless opportunities around us. And they really are boundless. I know many of you, certainly most of my colleagues, if not all of them, have tired of hearing me say this, but I'm kind of like a kid in a candy store in this respect. We live in the very best of times when it comes to finding, preserving, and presenting our family stories. So much data is available on the web for free and for fee, for a price. So much technology is available to us. Imagine astronauts flew to the moon for the first time on less technology than we carry around in our purses and pockets with our smart devices. Can you believe that? Can you believe that we as a group of people, we as individuals on planet Earth are taking more than 1 trillion pictures every year? Can you imagine that? At no additional cost, no development, no taking it to a processor. We carry these things around with us. Who could have imagined that we would carry many, many photo albums around in our pockets in 2022? So wonderful opportunities. How can we leverage these opportunities? How can we really do well in telling the stories? Finding our family stories really is an awesome thing. We talked at the beginning of the month about how really important story is, how powerful story. Remember, we talked about for our young people, for our children and grandchildren, knowing their stories makes them better individuals, makes them better people at every level. So it makes them better academically, makes them better socially, allows them to recover from tragedies better than other individuals who don't know their family stories. They're open to change and diversity more than other people who are not familiar with their family stories. I ask the question, the rhetorical question, over and over again. Why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we find our family stories and tell the stories? Tell the stories. And there's so many ways we can tell the stories. So we know that it's an awesome thing to be finding our family stories. A really awesome thing, because not only does it benefit our young people, our children and grandchildren, but increasingly we're hearing, and we covered this in a previous Wednesday session, we're increasingly hearing how knowing story, contexting story around recipes and family albums and photographs helps people on the dementia spectrum stay more plugged in, recognize family members longer, be more agreeable with elder care staff and taking medications and staying hydrated and staying happy and staying happy individuals interested in continuing to live. Oh my goodness, what we're doing is really, really an awesome thing. But what are we doing? What are you doing? Yes, I'm talking to you. What am I doing? What are we doing? Are we telling our family stories, or are we gathering stuff? I believe that to tell the story, to tell the story of all my family lines, for you to tell the story of your various family lines, for you to tell the story of your life, we need to be active and intentional about that. We can't just continue to gather stuff. I would much rather my story stay around for generations, if not centuries, rather than my story being gone a couple of months to maybe a year after my demise, when my children and grandchildren are cleaning out my study and all they see is stuff. All they see is old papers. Again, all they see is old stuff, out of context, no story. I'd rather be preserving this, as crude as it might be, than trying to preserve this, because what you see in front of you is not story, it's stuff. to tell the story, to tell our story, we need to be intentional. We need to do meaningful things to create story so that we can tell the story. I would encourage us literally today, Wednesday, end of October 2022, make a commitment to take action to tell your story, to tell all the stories woven into your story. How can we do that? I'm going to give a number of things. They're really pedestrian, and I'm going to hypothesize that almost no one does this. I can look into my own life and say, Curt, you're really falling short in a number of these places. But to tell the story of our lives, to make our research and our time worthwhile in passing our family stories on to our children and grandchildren, to our nephews and nieces and grandnephews and nieces, we need to take some fundamental steps and be on with it. Do it. The old Nike commercial, the old Nike theme, just do it. We need to embrace that. So number one is write up your research. We've touched on this, and so have my colleagues a number of different times. We are so good and we're so excited about the free trials we get to amazing databases, about the subscriptions that we decide to purchase to, again, amazing databases, about all the free material that's available on the web, on the internet. We're so excited about that I believe that if we're honest, if we're just stone cold sober honest with ourselves, we spend most all of our time stuff gathering. Oh, here's a record. Oh, there's a record. Here's another record. I'm not really sure this fits, but it kind of sort of does. I'll print it, scan it, save it. I'll evaluate it later. And what do we know? Again, let's be sober with each other. Let's be honest. For many of us, most of the stuff we gather never gets collated, never gets organized, never gets evaluated. So we never get to the write up process. We really need to stop this incessant gathering of stuff and be more intentional about writing up, about creating a narrative. And you don't have to necessarily literally write with a pen or pencil. You can key it. You can use voice recognition software to speak it if you want, but we need to figuratively at least write up our research. And I'm going to offer that for every hour of research, you need to stop and do 10 minutes of writing. I'm serious. We're not doing it. We will always get the old phrase, oh, I'll get around to it. Around to it for most of us never happens. And if it does happen, it never happens to the extent, the depth and breadth that it should. Please join me in committing to, for every hour of research, we spend 10 minutes of writing. And some of you may be saying, what in the dickens are you talking about, Curt? This sounds crazy. What am I going to write about for 10 minutes? I've just searched some census records. I've made a few finds, I think. I'm still trying to put it all together. That's what you write about. Because if you don't start writing when you begin gathering, you will never really write the story, so you will not be able to tell the story. So if you've had a really successful day, you won't be able to capture it all in 10 minutes. If you had a really lousy search day and that most everything you've looked for you have not been able to find, you may only need 3 to 5 minutes to chronicle that. I looked in Franklin County, in a particular state, for probate records. I heard that Ancestry and Family Search were doing a project together. I can't find any of them for my county, and maybe chronicle where you looked. But when you do find a record that you believe contains an ancestor, or a high probability that the person you're looking at on a document in a record is your ancestor, write about that. I believe this Valentine Witcher is my paternal grandfather. And I believe it because my father and my mother talked about him a lot whenever they would talk about the old days. They talked about, well, basically anything. 1 hour of research, 10 minutes of writing. We need to commit to that. And then just write. You don't need to do some research to have an excuse, a reason to write. Just write. And you might say, Curt, you're forgetting that empty piece of paper, that blank screen syndrome. No, I'm not. I believe as much as anyone else, I suffer from that, if I can use the term suffer. I have a hard time looking at a blank screen and saying, I need to write 500 words. I need to write 1,500 words. We can do some things to tease ourselves into being in that writing mode, being in that mode to actually write. What are some of those things? I call them writing prompts. You probably do too. Call them whatever you'd like. Call them eye candy. Call them my consciousness rapping on my mind. Doesn't matter. Just embrace a couple of them, not just one of them, but a couple of them. Maybe embrace all of them. We've heard this forever. Many of us don't make the connection, and that's okay. But we can write better when we read more. Sounds a little silly until you think about it. And it's like, oh, that makes sense. So we should read like all the time. And if we're not literally reading with our eyes, there again, we live in the best of times. There are audiobooks available to us. There's all kinds of downloadable audio files that we can listen to. And listen in that state of mind where you're asking yourself, is there a similar relationship in my life, in my family stories? Hearing this person's account of the depression, this person's account of breaking up with someone, this person's account of the heartbreak of losing a loved one, does that bring back memories of my experience or things that I have found in my family history research? Those are the things you want to grab onto figuratively and write about those. Those are the stories that you will want to tell. Listen to stories. Listening to stories can be writing prompts as well. National Public Radio and others in your communities, there's wonderful stories. And when I hear any of these stories, I'm always flashing back to things in my life, in my children's lives, and things that I have found in my ancestral research. Plant and nourish in your mind that writing prompt of, oh, that reminds me of. Whenever I hear about playing cards, I always think of my maternal grandmother. Why? Because she loved to play cards. And if that wasn't enough to sear that in my brain, my mother hated the fact that she loved to play cards. They played all kinds of card games. And my mother, every time they got out a deck, just get furious. Kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is what it is, right? So playing cards, seeing cards, and we'll see some cards again in just a moment. Write every day. You can find all kinds of cheap journals, notebook paper. You can get a 99-cent Walmart 3-ring binder with some college rule paper. It doesn't have to be a fancy journal. Or if you're like me, writing in something special makes me want to write a little more than just scribbling on a piece of paper. But commit to writing every day. You'll get in the habit of it. You'll get so much in the habit of it that, listen, that you will want to do it. You will want to write. You will look forward to writing. I know it's hard to believe for some of us. So a number of you probably have seen this in the past. I love traipsing out this letter for all kinds of reasons. Glenn Baker, we have over 6,000 pages of his World War II and Korea War veteran letters to and from the home front. I love this early one when he was just going to camp. The PS2, please send me something in a big box quick because I have some dirty clothes I need to send home. How many of us does that remind us of? Reading that reminds me of when my kids were going to college. Yeah, coming home, we loved it when they came home, but we knew the laundry room needed to be cleaned out. There needed to be soap, there needed to be dryer sheets, and needed to be all set to go to take care of those dirty laundry efforts that would accompany their visits. We all have similar experiences like that. So whenever I see a military funeral, I've been to a number, as I'm sure most, if not all of you have. Whenever I see the folded flag, I think of what an honor it is that I have my father's military burial flag and I have my father-in-law's military burial flag. Way different experiences, almost overlapped wars or wartime experiences, I should say. But I've written many journal entries about what that means, what that feels like. I've written about what we all can write about how many veterans don't like to tell their story, don't like to really be in the spotlight. And how did I get information from my father-in-law and my father? Well, I write about that. And it's not necessarily easy, as all of you know. A person I consider a friend, who's president of the Northeast Indiana Jewish Genealogical Society, Betsy Gephardt. For years now, she has been, every holiday season, she writes a story for her oldest child and gives her youngest child the story that she gave her oldest child last year. So by the time they get into their late teenage years, they'll all have a copy of these stories. She's telling the story. She takes a section, a branch, a family group, and tells the story. We can do that too. Yes, it takes a commitment of time, but oh my goodness, what a gift to give to our children and grandchildren, telling the story. It's so very important. When we try to think about telling the story, sometimes it helps to listen to others telling their story. We can get hints and tips, and maybe we could even call them tricks, about how to say something that's engaging, how to say something that makes someone almost beg for more. Maybe we should call it the art of storytelling, the art and the science of storytelling. Listen to others telling their stories. And I would advise, please listen to hear. Please listen to understand. Please don't listen to respond. We as individuals lose so much in conversations because we'll focus, our ears and our brain will focus on one word. Maybe it'll be bicycle, as you see in front of you. Maybe it'll be out for a great stroll or a great bike ride when the weather's turning a little cool. And we stop listening to the rest of what the individual or individuals are saying. Why? Because we're listening to respond. We're just waiting till they just shut up. Just be quiet. I'm ready to respond. No, that's not how we should listen. We should listen to hear, listen to understand, not listen to say, oh, well, I used to have a bike like that. Mine, the little back rack broke off, and so never really could carry anything on there. Well, most of the times when we're listening to respond, again, we're not hearing what's being said. So when you listen to stories, listen to understand. Listen to see if you really do have a similar experience. Last Friday, I and a colleague of mine had an awesome time. We had a great opportunity to go out to one of the high schools in the Fort Wayne area. We went to 2 different combined class periods. They had worked all semester on a project called Ancestry Me, and they worked on their family histories, and they could present them in any creative or traditional way that they wanted to. And I just wanted to share some of these because I think these too are writing prompts, watching, hearing, seeing someone demonstrate, articulate their family story. And these are freshmen in high school, right? Freshmen in high school. Who said that kids don't care? So this one particular student basically created a memory box. It's wonderful and not unique at all, but it was interesting and wonderful to hear her tell the story of, on each of the 4 sides of the box are pictures of each of her 4 grandparents. Well, how cool is that? Is that like really totally original? No, people have been doing those kinds of divisions forever. But inside her box was a scrapbook. Inside her box were pictures, other things that just reminded me that my family scrapbooks, my 5-year journals that I recently discovered while cleaning out my mother's house, So wonderful ways of jogging our own memories. And over the weekend in my journaling, I wrote about this Wayne Newtek experience. So this was one project. Another project, and we can all smile. I know you, I can't see you all, but you all are smiling. Maggie's Family Recipe Book. We've talked forever about how family recipes are so cool, so neat, to be able to kind of chronicle generations by what they cooked. And we know that the olfactory sense for humans is one of the most powerful memory recall senses. And so we can write our stories based on looking at our old recipes. Have we ever thought about putting them into a book and then writing 10 minutes, 15 minutes on each recipe? Maybe if we start, we'd find ourselves writing an hour on each recipe, because the sight of the recipe and our minds remembering the smell may make those keys on our keyboards just fly with recollections. So it was neat to see Maggie's Family Recipe Book. This young female freshman at Wayne Newtek, she and her father made the tree, the wooden tree there on his skill saw, and she hung cards and she pasted over the middle part of each card family information. So you see the King of Hearts there. On the opposite side of the tree is the King of Diamonds, and that's on one side of her family. The King of Clubs that you see on the opposite side is the King of Spades. And when I first saw this, I thought, well, being, a more advanced researcher, I thought, well, they're in the wrong direction. The cards are going in the wrong direction. But it's like, who cares? She's recording her family story. And she was excited about it. She was excited that she got to work with her father. She was excited that she could make something kind of creative, hanging cards off of trees. And then the little orange leaves or acorns that you see on the table there were more stories about individuals underneath those particular lineup of cards. So what did Curt's mind do? I immediately rolled back to my maternal grandmother and how she loved cards. I rolled back to how my mother just hated it, probably because my maternal grandmother loved it so much. I thought, what a cool thing to spend some time with a parent doing family history, family story, doing something unique and creative. So we can use listening and watching others as writing prompts, as memory triggers for ourselves. And again, listen. So again, at Wayne Newtek, there was, she was very serious, but not too serious. She wasn't weepy sober, but she was kind of consternated sober, that she met one of her grandparents. She told me this when I was looking at her project at Wayne Newtek. She met one of her grandfathers at his funeral, and she kind of looked a combination of wistfully and longingly, like, I could talk to him there, but he wasn't going to answer. Not bemused by the fact that her deceased grandfather wasn't answering, but bemused and consternated by the fact that I didn't meet him soon enough. I didn't get the opportunity to talk with him and get an answer. If you think about that long enough, that's pretty powerful. And that's kind of a writing prompt for us. How did we feel about the ones that we lost? How did we feel about those who are special in our life that we didn't quite get to ask all the questions? We all share that in common, right? So intentionally tell our stories. Talk with living family members, close and distant. Share your story. Write up those stories. Use all gatherings, and we know at the end of the year and the holiday seasons, we have a number of gatherings coming up. Use all the gatherings, not to blather on about how great you are and about how hard it was to do the research, and you should be grateful that I found all this stuff. No, tell engaging stories that have conversational ties, that have ties to the contemporary generation. Again, you're not telling a story, you're not telling the story to make yourself look good, to get all kinds of sympathy and kudos for the great work that you've done. You're telling the story to pass along something really precious. you're telling the story to make your children and grandchildren and your family members more powerful because they do know their story. Share the story, not the process. That always brings to mind what people like to joke about, the making of sausage. No one wants to hear about how sausage is made, nor see how sausage is made. They just want to taste well-made sausage and compliment the chef on the well-made sausage. Again, read with without abandon. Just read as often as you possibly can, everything you possibly can. If you have a favorite author, I know people like fiction. I almost never read fiction. My bad, I'll own that. But there's so much nonfiction to read from different people's perspectives. It gives me cause for pause and cause to think. Read to your children and grandchildren. It is so powerful, and it is part of telling the story. You can read from books that are in public libraries and other libraries nationwide, and that's awesome. I know the Allen County Public Library has awesome children's books, but they will also, your children and grandchildren will also enjoy you reading the writing that you've done on your research. They will enjoy hearing you tell the story. Use all the tech that you have. Oh my goodness, our smart devices take billions of pictures. We can download recording apps and we can record our voices talking about pictures. Use that tech. We're partnering with VividPix for individuals to come in and scan photographs and attach memories and information to those photographs. Use any technology you have to enable you to tell the story, right? One of my colleagues, Allison, really enjoyed this and continues to use this audio biography app, not autobiography. That's a cool thing to do too. And we just don't have enough time to cover that. But this is audio biography. And it's an app you pay for, pretty modest in my humble opinion. Look what it says in the middle of the screen. We are troves of wisdom. We do have stories to tell. Please tell the stories. Just going to run down quickly what this app does. It's a storytelling and story sharing platform. They send an interview question every week to a loved one via email. They click on the link, tap on the link, and record their answer on their smart device. So you not only get part of the story, you get their voice. How precious is that to share with future generations? They send a prompt every week for a year or longer, depending on what you sign up for. All the recordings are compiled into a single playable podcast, and those can be shared forever. What an amazing thing. What an amazing way we can use technology. We can use technology to self-publish. Lulu, many genealogists are publishing through Lulu. There are others. There's just wonderful things available to us for a very economical cost, I should say. And you can see some of the titles here and some of the titles here. Sometimes even looking at titles of other people's self-published books can be inspiration for us, right? What about the third one from the right there? Things I need to get done, but probably won't. That sounds like fun to just basically tell the story of what our aspirations are that are maybe beyond our reach. And we see another example of a recipe book. All kinds of triggers for us to write stories, right? So please, as we conclude Family History Month in a few days and blaze on into the holiday season, and you'll be able to take advantage of our Tuesday afternoon and Thursday programs through the end of the year, please tell the story. Tell the story. The power is all in your hands and in your mind. I hope Family History Month has been a great month for you. I hope that you are in a position to really commit to telling the story. It's a powerful thing, and it's the most wonderful gift we can give to those who are coming behind us, for our children, grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren whom we will never meet. I wish you much success. in the remaining days and hours of Family History Month, use this time to continue to motivate yourself to connect and communicate with family members. And I hope to see you tomorrow evening at 6:30 for our regular Thursday evening program. Do take care and remember to tell the story.